Hi everyone. There's a piece of the story that hasn't been spoken about, and a couple of days ago I had three unidentified men turn up at my home, quite intimidating, saying they had a warrant. This warrant was on a handheld device. Never saw a signature, never even saw the document. But I called the police, said that I was feeling distressed and intimidated in my own home. So the police were called, but upon turning up to the property, they'd spoken to these agents first. So when they approached the property to the door, I was already standing at the door and I could hear the radio. And the radio said, it was a woman on the radio saying, yes, she's got a history of violence. And I said to the policeman, I said, are they talking about me? And he sort of shrugged it off and said, no, they're talking about someone else, and turned it down. But obviously, to clarify, history says that she has a history, past of violence. But her story says she spent her lifetime defending herself. So this all started when I first moved into this property in 2019. And the reason I moved here is because I was receiving threatening letters at my old home, threatening my life, anonymous letters. So I took them to the police and had to keep banging on the door and saying, look, what's going on? Nothing's being... So I ended up being moved here, and it's a lovely little house. But in 2019, when I moved in, we was told that this was eco-friendly homes and we would save money on bills, etc., etc. But upon moving into the property, I realised that I was spending a lot more on the bills here than what I ever have done anywhere else, even in the pubs. The electric here was really expensive, and there's no gas, so it's all electric. And as I said, it was supposed to be eco-friendly built homes, saving money on bills. There's 6 solar panels on the roof. And I was coming down the stairs in the morning, and on the display it was saying £7. So from midnight until I get up in the morning, well, there's no electric on in the house, maybe a bit of heating in the morning, or a shower. It was saying I'd racked up £7 before I'd even put the kettle on in the morning. So I was complaining and raising these issues, not just myself as Eva, because it was between the neighbours as well, and we called them out, and we had E.ON and we had the Housing Association out, and they got together and they decided to disclose that the meters was not fit for purpose. But in order to get the meters changed, that we had to fork out £200 to E.ON to get the correct meters put in, and then we would get reimbursed. Well, at the time I couldn't afford that, so I refused. And I was paying by direct debit monthly for the bill since I moved in, so it wasn't like I wasn't paying bills. And then I was getting these extortionate bills, so I was contesting them. And then obviously my dad got taken from my care here on the 7th of August, which was 3 days after he'd been kicked out of hospital and after he'd diagnosed him with the PCR test. So he was taken from my care here at this home, and I knew, I was told in my soul, the gut, everything. God told me, you can't stay here. I didn't know why, but I knew I needed to get away. So I did. And then I was speaking to my dad, which was then prevented from the hospital. But the last words he ever said to me was, Keely, they keep going on about the track and trace. The track and trace, Keely. Now, if my dad was a dying man, why would they be bothering him with that? Track and trace. So they're bothering my dad while he's on CPAP and struggling to breathe, or being forced onto CPAP while he's struggling to breathe. So I'm trying to ring him and speak to him. He's struggling to speak. And these words that come out of his mouth was, Keely, they keep going on about the track and trace, Keely. So he was warning me. I knew I had to get away from here, like they were. Which hence why I couldn't show up to the court hearing on the 11th of August at Cambridge. I told the court I'd been instructed to self-isolate, and then they found the name guilty in my absence, after being told that that there was instructions to self-isolate. So I was away. I spent some time away with just making notices, doing court paperwork, trying to get someone to acknowledge all this arbitrary treatment and misadministrations and forced criminality, etc., etc. So when I eventually did come back, which was quite some time later, and everything was off in the property, I turned everything off. So when I came back, there was a few hand-delivered letters from E.ON, a couple, that had been delivered very close to the day when my dad was taken and when I had to leave. So I hadn't received them because I hadn't been here. And then there was another bill of nearly £40,000 from E.ON. And they'd cut the electric off and they fitted a smart meter. So I was trying to deal with the courts and the warrant, and there was a warrant out, a false warrant, an unlawful warrant that was out for quite some time. And the court won't listen to my paperwork. David Anthony Farrell, who was the recorder of Cambridge at the time, had seen it and told the lower courts to send it for judicial review, and that never happened. They never followed his instructions, and he retired some few weeks later. So that was that. That warrant was just outstanding. Nobody followed the instructions of the QC, or the official recorder of Cambridge. Nobody followed their instructions, and they just proceeded with that false warrant. So it was hard because I was trying to get myself heard. I wanted to go to court and get heard, but they were preventing that. So I turned up back here to be able to try and find a bit of peace, of ducking and diving and staying from place to place for quite some time. I just needed home. I needed peace. So I came back here, and there was a £40,000 bill. They'd cut the electric off, fitted a smart meter. It was a prepay one that the debt was on the back of the meter. So as soon as I start using my card to use that meter, I'm consenting to having that debt on the back of the meter, which is £40,000, which was absolutely incorrect and vicious. But also, with the warrant outstanding, for me to put money on that meter, then it flashes up and they know I'm here. So it's like setting a beacon out there to say that I'm here when I'm just trying to get some peace in this chaos of trying to get myself heard and get the right administration in the courts to be able to fight for my freedom, my peace and liberty. Not just for me, but for everybody. But I never saw my dad again. The last words he said to me was, Keely, they keep going on about the track and trace. Track and trace, Keely. Why would they be bothering a dying man with such things, or so-called dying man with such things? My dad was warning me. He was warning me. So when I came back and I couldn't move into the house, I couldn't stay at the house with electric, because essentially been flashing myself up to say that I'm here, and then the warrant being enforced, but they're not following the court paperwork or the notices and everything that had already been put in to the court. So it's just on and on and on and on and on. So I point blank refused a smart meter. And I've explicitly said that since day one. I did not want a smart meter. I was paying my bills. I was paying monthly bills, direct debit set up. And then they was sending me extortionate prices that no single woman on her own should have to pay. £40,000. I'd only been in the property a year. And I was paying nearly £60 a month direct debit. Obviously, I stopped the direct debit when I realised that they were billing me these big bills on top of the direct debit that I was already paying. It's just a load of nonsense, it really is. But anyway, so I've been contesting this with E.ON for quite some time. There was no way I could afford £40,000 for electric. And then a few days ago, bearing in mind they're not listening to my paperwork, a few days ago 3 unidentified men showed up at the house. They wouldn't identify themselves. They were trying to identify themselves with like a collar number, with numbers, like the police do, which was unacceptable. So as I said, I called the police. The police came. They spoke to them agents before they even come to the house, the door. And upon approaching the house, my home, I heard the radio. Can I say the radio? A woman on the radio had said to this copper, she's got a history of violence. He didn't tell me that was about me, but I knew it was because they'd obviously done a check on walking up to the property to find out about the name. Well, his story might say that there's a history of violence, but her story would say that she spent a lifetime defending herself. I'm not violent. And I wasn't violent with them, just assertive, firm, in truth. And yes, sometimes I do raise my voice a bit when people do not want to listen. But now I've got a forced smart meter in this house against my explicit wishes. And I've done a lot of research into these meters, and I know it's not just about surveillance and surveilling your every move, collecting data. They can be hacked. I'm in the position where I could build more false bills. And it's just at their discretion, really. The meter reading on the radio frequency, the microwaves from the smart meter, I mean, they were quite low in this house, but they have raised quite significantly, especially around my bed. And if some of you remember what we went through with my dad, I've still got the videos.